COVID-19 brought about, and that is a lot more online worship. You know, we had some online worshiping before then, but certainly worldwide and church-wide, that's one thing that has stood even after COVID. We still have online worshipers, and it's a new world that we live in, but we do want you to know that we appreciate your presence. Even we have some in Austin that worship online, but we have worldwide worshipers, by the way. They tune in for not only Sunday morning, they tune in Wednesday nights also to listen to what God has to say. You know, I know it's a personal sacrifice to come out on Wednesdays and to listen in on Wednesday, because there's a lot of things that consume your time. So once again, I certainly appreciate it, and I think you'll be blessed. You also took some time out from your personal time. You know, you have some problems you could be dealing with. And I believe that to be true for all of us. We all have some personal problems that we're dealing with. I'm amazed at how many people I've talked to just recently and looked at and listened to some of their problems. My wife and I were in Oklahoma a few days ago, and we were talking to a friend, and she was telling us about all of her problems. And she has a heavy burden to bear. She looked good on the outside. When I'm on the outside looking in, and everything looked in order. But when she started talking and telling us about her problems, you know, she had some big problems in her life. And we told her we would pray for her. And then I made it back home, and I have a niece that was in a horrific car accident in Dallas. And so my sister's been calling me and saying, hey, this is what's going on with my niece. She had an accident about a month ago, and she's been on her back in the hospital ever since. You know, you never know from one minute to the next what will happen. But that's a problem. It may not be affecting me with my bodily issues, but it's a niece. And when you have family problems, then it certainly affects you as well. She's had over 20 surgeries since that accident. And my sister sent me a picture today to show me, you know, what was going on, and I could barely look at that picture there. It's just, she's been through so much. And so that's a problem for me. You know, one thing about problems, it would be one thing if they came in multiples of one. You know, if you had a problem and you had a sufficient time to solve that problem, that would be one thing. But what life has taught me is that every once in a while you'll get a problem that you can solve. But often problems come in multiple. They may come in pairs of 2 or 3 at the same time. And so the difference really is how we deal with these problems. And that's why I thank you all for coming out and taking a break, at least a short break, from some of your personal problems. Let's get into our lesson here. We're in the book of, we're going to skip some of this here. I think I'm on right now. I heard it beep, and I'm supposed to point over here. Here's something if I would let you all introduce the topic tonight, by the way. You know, there was an old TV show, I think they call it the $25,000 Pyramid. Anyone remember that show? Where they would have a category, and then they would give out clues to the category, and someone had to guess the category. So tonight, though, what we're going to do is skip this for time's sake. But if I put that category up, someone would give out clues. Like, what's one of the clues you would give out to have someone guessing what this category is? Anyone have any idea? Sears. Used to be my favorite store, Sears, by the way. Gave me my first credit card. Dillard's.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, we got some favorites. Dillard's. J.C. Penney. Oh yeah, I like J.C. Penney also. Yeah, y'all are familiar with the. Yeah, there you go. Amazon kind of took some of that away, didn't it? Yeah, supplies you need for school. As we begin school here, you would give out some clues. But tonight, though, there's some clues to give out, and it's a subject that last time I was up, I think we preached about. It's simply the truth. The truth is, it's something that I grew up expecting for people to tell. It's something that people told me you always need to tell. And it's a subject where if you look at the opposite of truth, it's probably a space we've all been in at some point in our lives. The opposite of the truth is it's a falsehood. It's a lie. Fraud. Yeah, I mean, we've all been in that space. Now, it takes some of us a little while longer to think back when the last time we told or been in that space. But we've all been there. So I thought we would just kind of continue on, because in the young adult class, and I think they're going to join us, or they already have. Oh, I'm looking, yeah, they're right here. We have the young adults that have joined our class tonight. We in January, we start talking about the truth. We talked about two sides of the truth, or there's something called the truth, something you need to know, but there's something about how you use the truth. And we were getting to the portion of how do you use it. First of all, you need to know it. And there's so much out there now, and there's so much confusion. People are confused, and a lot of people don't even know the truth. So in our young adult class, I said, hey, I need some information so I can bring back and teach to the adult class at some point in time. We're going to see how some of our young adults, by the way, some of the brightest young students in America. We have some of the best students around. And you're going to see, oh yeah, you can clap for them, because they are, I'm amazed at some of their comments and how they receive information, give out information. But let's move on through, because tonight, and so in our class I said, someone needs a megaphone. Someone has to be responsible for telling the truth. And I just found out, by the way, Brother Brown, who did some meetings for us from Richmond, Virginia, passed away. And I thought I heard a sermon where he talked about the truth. And I thought tonight we would just go back and revisit a lesson just dealing with the truth. From 2 Kings chapter 5, as I think is where we want to start, and read that chapter, and then we'll look at the verses as we look at an issue. Some consequences for someone not telling the truth. And then we'll look at how our young adults answered the questions, or some questions, or their feedback when we dealt with truth. Let's look at 2 Kings chapter 5. We'll read through it, and then we'll go through and break it down. Then we'll get to our young adults, some of their comments and feedback. So chapter 5, verse 1 says, Now Naaman, commander of the army, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but a leper. This story starts out, it's a contrast. It starts out by telling us about a mighty man, but in your life there's always a but. You notice that. He was a great man, but he was a leper. Had it not been for this but, maybe Naaman would not have been in this story. You know, some of the buts in our life, by the way, is something that God puts there so he can use us to bring about glory. Look at this mighty man. No matter how mighty you are in life, you'll run into situations that you cannot fix, that you cannot cure, you cannot handle on your own. You can have all of the might, all of the money, all of the friends. You can live on the right side of town. But there are some things in life that you cannot fix. And here is Naaman. He finds himself, he's a commander of this army of Syria. Keep in mind now, Syria is an enemy of Israel. Verse 2 says, and the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. So this young girl is a slave, if you will. God can use people. You're going to see how he uses this young girl who was a captive. Then verse 3 says, then she said to her mistress, if only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria. If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy. So a young girl has the answer to a problem. Young adults, it doesn't matter how young you are. You have some answers to some problems, by the way. This young girl, a slave, could have been focused on what her situation and circumstances. But she notices right up front, I have a solution to a problem. You might be mighty, Naaman, but if you want a solution, you better listen to me. I'm a young girl. Verse 4 goes on, and it says, well, let's break this down a little bit more. So remember Naaman, this commander of the army, he's a king of Syria. So he was great, but what I haven't read here, let's just go and look at that. He was great and honorable, and he was a mighty man of valor, but he had leprosy. Now leprosy is also representative of something in our life. We all have leprosy, spiritual leprosy, if you will. We're all sinners, by the way. We all have this. And the definition of leprosy, you're going to see, and we're going to walk through, and I think you'll see sin when you see this definition of leprosy. So you have the character's name or name, but see, but he was a leper, as we mentioned. He was a leper. He was successful, but he had that but in his life. Now, this is the definition of leprosy. It began as small red spots. Some sin in our lives began as small red spots. We ended our young adult class last week and we were talking about this $1.3 billion lottery. I read about this in the newspaper, online, that there was $1.3 billion. And I was talking to my neighbor, and he said, just imagine you spending $20 and you find out you won $1.3 billion. And I said, man, that sounds really good. You spend 3 and you come out at 1.3 billion? You spend 20? And he said, I'm hoping I come out with the 1.3 billion. And I said, I'm glad you're my friend, by the way. Because if you come out with 1.3 billion, I know you'll look out for me. And he said, I absolutely will. So I don't play, but I was hoping that some of my relatives, because they play, by the way, they know the numbers, some of my friends. And I knew none of you in here would be able to help me out, because none of you all, somebody was going to pay off that building back there, weren't you? But so it starts small. So in the young adult class, I gave them all $1 to show them that, look, I can afford $1, but I can't afford to play the lottery. It starts small. You know how people become addicted to gambling? You know they have penny slots in Las Vegas? 1 penny. We talked in the young adult class, if you see a penny on the ground these days, most of us, some of us, would any of us stoop down that low? Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's how it starts small. And you see, it starts with red spots. You can get so involved in sin until after you've been in it a while, you won't even recognize it. It may start red, but you're going to see what happens as leprosy continues on. It says it starts on the skin. Pretty easy to identify. Starts small red spots on the skin. But then it says before too long, the spots get what? They get a little bigger. I started with $1, but now, and I was close to winning, by the way. And really, one of the reasons I don't play the lottery or anything else is I feel like I'm lucky. And I feel like if I spend $1, I'm going to win. I do. I feel like if I go out there right now and put $1 down, I'm going to win something. That's a dangerous position to be in. Because not only do I feel like I'm going to win, I've got a lot of relatives that's been feeling like they're going to win for the last 20, 25 years. And they haven't paid me back yet, which means they haven't won the lottery. And it ain't going to happen, by the way. So sin starts, you can identify it. Small, on the skin, gets bigger. And it started to turn what? Remember, it started red. But now it's spreading now. And that's how sin does. You know, I could identify the one spot, but now it's turning white. Keep that in mind, because at the end of this story, something else is going to happen to someone that got leprosy. And then it goes on to say it spreads all over the whole body. It started on the skin, but sin will spread beyond the skin, is what this is telling us. And hair begins to fall out. Hair begins to fall out. And I'm glad that that's not the sign for all lepers, by the way. It begins to fall out. It affects the hair. And then the eyebrows, and all things get worse. The fingernails and toenails become loose. You see, that's what leprosy did. And this is what Naaman was facing, by the way. Naaman knew the prognosis. He knew what was going to happen if he didn't get cured. And he has to go figure out quickly, who do I need to come in contact with? So this little slave girl tells him, this is who you need to go see. Let's see what happens here. You need to go see this prophet. You need to get in contact with this man of God. Isn't that true today when we have a sin problem? That has not changed. When we have problems, we still need to get in contact with someone that knows God. Okay, he thought the captive, rather young girl from this land of Israel, an unwilling missionary, she had no idea she would be in this position. But yet she's helping someone. Verse 4 through 7. It says, and Naaman went in and told his master, saying, thus and thus said the girl who is from the land of Israel. He's willing to listen to somebody now. You know, when you're down and out, you'd be surprised who you'll listen to. You begin to listen to folk when you're in bad condition. Verse 5 says, then the king of Syria said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. So now I'm not only going to go empty-handed, I want to be healed. The king says, okay, I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions. Just going over there since you heard that there was someone that could help you. And I'm going to give you a letter. Remember now, Syria and Israel are enemies. I'm sending a letter. A king from Syria is sending a letter. If I'm your enemy, though, and I get that letter, something's going to happen. something's going to go down when the king of Israel gets this letter. Verse number 6 says, then he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, now be advised, when this letter comes to you, that I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy. Now you're my enemy, so what are you up to? Yeah. You know, you haven't been contacting me. You're from Syria, you're my enemy, now you're sending me a letter. Something's going on. I mean, I'm a king, by the way. I was born in the morning, but not this morning, as they would say. Something's going on. I don't trust you. We get to verse number, let me see where we are here. He says, go now and I will send a letter to you. Remember, they're enemies. So the letter comes from the king of Assyria to Israel. And he took it with him. He took 10 talents of silver. Now, this is, there's a debate on how much this is. But, you know, from some studies, it says it's about $1.2 million is what he takes with him. That's, for most of us, the 1.2 million is a lot of money. Even today, 1.2 would be a lot of money. See, when you're sick and you're down and out, money doesn't mean very much. This is something that I think we all could know, by the way, but we need it as a reminder. Your health is much more important than any amount of money. And obviously this king didn't have a problem. He said, go ahead and take what you need because you're a mighty man of valor and I need you. So he takes his $1.2 million and he takes some clothing with him too. See, he's not only taking money. So 1.2 million is what Naaman is taking with him. Verse 5 through 8 through chapter 5, verse 8 through 11, as we move through. So it was when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes. So the king was upset. You're setting me up. I cannot heal you, is what the king of Israel says. Why are you coming to me? I can't heal you. So now here's another messenger says, king, don't worry about this. Elijah says, I've got this. Your title may be one thing, but there are some people on your team that can move and do things beyond your title. That's why everyone's important. Everyone is valuable on this team. You know that? The king of Israel couldn't do it, but you've got a man of God. Everyone is valuable. We need everyone on this team pulling their weight. We need you. The girl in this story, the slave girl, was valuable. Doesn't matter your title, where you're from. You're valuable in God's kingdom. And now we have a situation where Elijah goes out. He is the man now that can do some help. He can help. So verse 8, remember it says that he heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes. That he sent to the king saying, why have you torn your clothes? Please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. Verse 9, then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elijah's house. The man of valor, Naaman, maybe has some patches on his shoulder. I'm somebody. Verse 10 says that Elijah sent a messenger to him. Elijah didn't even come out. Sent a messenger to him. And then he says, go and wash in Jerusalem 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. A very simple, straightforward direction. This is not complicated. You can do this. Go wash yourself 7 times. What's complicated about that? Here's this but in verse 11. But Naaman became furious and went away and said, indeed, I said to myself. This is the problem. You're talking to yourself too much when you should be listening. Sometimes we talk to ourselves when we should be listening, and not only listening, we should be doing. The man of God told him what to do. And yet, he's the one upset. And listen to what Naaman says in verse 11. He will surely come out to me. I'm the important person. You don't send a messenger to me. You come to me and tell me what to do. And he thought he would stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. He already had his plan in mind. So it is. Sometimes we ask God, but we give him a timetable and a method of what we want him to do. That's not how God operates. God could really care less about our plan. Matter of fact, if that was your plan, why are you talking to the man of God? You could solve this yourself. Well, he couldn't do it. But he's upset. And as you've heard before, he's upset, but he still has leprosy. He's just an upset leper now with $1.2 million in his pocket. Verse 12. And listen, he asked the question, though, are not Abna and Pharpar rivers of Damascus better than all waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. I don't want to wash in that water, by the way. This is the water I want to wash in right here. This is Abner. It flows, it's clean. Take me back there. What's in water, by the way? This is what I don't want to be washing in this right here. This is not what I want to wash in. See, I don't want to do this. I want this water. I'm not interested in washing in this water here. See, he has in his mind this right here. As a matter of fact, I can drink this water. But do you think if I get thirsty, I'm going here? It doesn't work like that. God, you want me over here, but I want to be here. What do you think will happen? There you go. Let's get over here and just move through this. You need somebody in your life that's that can talk to you, that you will listen to, because obviously the man of God wasn't well versed in what he said. But you need someone in your life that will tell you the truth. Do you have anyone in your life that will tell you the truth? Can you count them on one hand? You need to find someone that is a critic of yours. Because had he not had these critics and someone telling him the truth, he would have gone back to Syria as a leper, a rich leper, a tired rich leper. But you need to get a circle of someone that doesn't really need anything from you. You need someone that you can deal with where the relationship is not always transactional. Because some people you deal with, it's based strictly on transactions, which means, what can you do for me? You need some people in your life. Verse 13 to 17. Let's just see the kind of people he had in his life. And his servants came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done? How much more then would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped 7. See, listen to somebody. So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Then and he returned. This is something important, because verse 15 says, and he returned to the man of God, and he had all his aids, and came and stood before him, and he said, indeed, now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. He did come back, by the way. When God does something for you, think there were 10 lepers in this camp, I believe. And then how many came back? Did 9 come back? Only, the Bible students said only 1 came back. But the sermon was, where are the 9? Are you one of the 1 or are you one of the 9? Do you come back when God does something for you? That's really the question. He came back at least, and he gave thanks. Now, he did offer a gift, I see in verse 15. Remember what he had. If I do something good for you, even though I'm a member of the church, I maybe have taken you to Walmart to get some groceries because you don't have a car. I know gas is high, by the way. And I'm not saying you maybe shouldn't take something, but they're on fixed income. There's a time for everything. I think the 1.2 million could have been used by Elijah, don't you all? But he said, I don't want it. I don't need it. There's a time for everything. But he offered him a gift in verse 15. Then in verse 16, but he said, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it. That is, Naaman said, take it. But he refused. You've been in those situations where you've been with someone and you pull out your credit card at the same time. And you say, no, I'm going to pay for this. And they say, no, I'm going to pay for it. And then there's a battle between who's going to pay for it. Right? Y'all been in those situations, right? Or do you always pay for it before they even ask? But he says, no, I'm not going to take it. I don't need anything. This work is done by God for his glory. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth. For your servant will no longer offer either burnt offerings or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. That's in verse 17. So he didn't take anything. He returned to the man. Verse 18 through 21 says, Yet in the things, my Lord, pardon your servant, when my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord please pardon your servant in this thing. Then he said to him, go in peace. So he departed from him a short distance. Now, this is where we get into our study with the truth. So it looks like everything is okay. Naaman has been healed. Got into the Jordan. Naaman's on his way back. Elijah didn't take anything. God's going to get some glory. You go back and tell him what happened. And by the way, tell him that I didn't take anything. You didn't have to purchase this. Now, if the story ended there, it would be one thing. But when we get around to verse number 22, or really verse number 20, the Bible says, but Gehazi. Now, you've got someone that's observing all of this. The servant of Elijah, the man of God, said, look, he is talking to himself too. You can get in trouble sometimes when you don't have someone to balance this. So he says, look, my master has spared Naaman the Syrian while not receiving from his hand what he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. You know what he wants from him? He saw all of the money and the clothes in the camp and then going away. If I get some of this, maybe I can pay off some of this church building that we owe. Can't you see Gehazi now? We need this to help the poor. Yeah, see, he is rationalizing his mind. And by the way, the Bible says that he ran after him. You know, he was actually running pretty fast. It's amazing how fast you can move when you want something for yourself. Now Gehazi enters the story in verse 21. So he runs after him, and then this is what he says. This is interesting here because I want you to count this. In verse 22 is where he makes his first mistake, because he catches up with Naaman, and then he says, Naaman had asked him, is all well? And he said, all is well. My master has sent me. Now, count these right here. Who is his master? Elijah said, I don't want anything. But Elijah went in the house. He runs away. And then he says in verse 22, it's not me. My master sent me. That's lie number. It starts as a red spot. That's lie number one. Now, if it ended right there, maybe it would be okay. Now, he goes on and says, indeed. Now, see, this is something how he makes up a story pretty quickly. He first of all, he caught up with him. Am I going to catch him? He caught him. But now, since I've caught him, is all well. Yeah, but my master sent me in verse 22. And then he says, indeed, just now, by the way, just now. Not one young man, but two young men and the sons of the prophet came to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Oh, he's quick on his feet because I caught up with him. Is everything well? It's well. But Elijah sent me. But just now, between you leaving, two men, by the way, from Ephraim comes. And they said, please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garment. Not for me, but give it to them. So Naaman said, please take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garments. And handed them to the 2 of his servants, and they carried them on ahead of him. See, I don't want to be associated with this sin. Y'all go ahead and go on. Remember, he's run, and he didn't have Nikes on when he did it. He caught up with them, and he starts his line. When we get to verse number 23, so Naaman said, please take the 2 talents, and in verse 24, when he came to the citadel, he took them from their hand. You made it here. He took them from those 2 servants and stored them away in the house. Then he let the men go, and they departed. I've got what I needed from you. You've delivered the goods. Go on about your business. I'm going to hide these in the house. Verse 25, now he went in and stood before his master. Elijah said to him, where did you go, Gehazi? You know, you've been running your robe. Something wrong with your robe. It's kind of dusty, by the way. Where did you go? Your feet are kind of dusty too, Gehazi. Where did you go? Ananias and Sapphira. Did you keep back part of the price? Now, where did you go? And listen to this. And he said, this is Gehazi. He's at least with lie number 3 here. Because in verse 25, he says, your servant did not go anywhere. It's hard to keep up sometimes when you start lying. But he was at line number 3, so it was fairly easy, but he was quick on his feet. I didn't go anywhere. But you know, you can't, he just saw what had transpired with Naaman. Isn't it amazing though when people see what God does, that they still try to trick God? He just saw it. The man of God. And now he says, I haven't gone anywhere. Now, here's what the young adults talked about in our class, because we're talking about the truth. They say that the truth, you know, you should always tell the truth because they say the truth will always come out. That's what the young adult said. Now, you may not see it, but it's going to come out. Maybe it's going to come out on Judgment Day, but it's coming out. So this is what our young adult. Then they said, number two, it will make things worse for you if you lie. This story about Gehazi is an example of where it didn't make it better. It actually made it worse, because the leprosy that Naaman had was transferred to, or was received by Gehazi. And it wasn't a slow progression, by the way. He went straight to white. Remember, it started slow with Naaman. And then the young adult said, you should always tell the truth because you don't want to lose respect. That's a good answer, I thought. Number four, they said it will help everyone grow. And we talked a lot about that. How will it help me grow if you tell the truth? Well, they answered that question. Then they said another thing, you're usually you're lying to yourself the most when you lie. And someone even mentioned something about, I don't know if it was a poet, they said, to thine own self. Yeah, they even quoted that. These are young adults in January. Then they say lying holds you back. I took the names off of these because they had we had names on the people that actually said this. The young adult said, the truth gives you a clear conscience. Telling the truth is priceless. Too much work to lie. Yeah, they said it's just too much. You tell the truth, you raise your right hand, put it on the Bible, you go to court. It may be a different version, but it's still the truth. Then they say it's easier to deal with the truth, just easier. Then one of the young adults said, an example of a baseball player. One of the teachers said, there's an example of a baseball player in these steroids. You know, one of them came and told the truth. Yeah, I took them. Took these steroids. I don't think it helped me hit any home runs, but I took the steroids and it helped me pitch. Then the other one said, I didn't know, it wasn't me. And to this day, that lie has held him back. One fessed up and told the truth and moved on. The other one said, no, even to this day, I didn't take any steroids. Well, you're 25 pounds bigger. I just been eating good. Well, they're still holding him back, was the example. Then someone else said, present day example in politics is what they mentioned, worldwide. They said there's an example of truth-telling or non-truth-telling in politics worldwide. And people get, sometimes they say never talk about religion and politics, I think in certain arenas. But if someone is lying, then they're lying. Whether it be politics or whether it be at HEB or Walmart. So they say, there's some examples right now worldwide. And there's some, by the way, you don't have to look very far. You can look right in between the borders of the United States when it comes to politics. They mention that also. And then elected representatives, they lie and they say it's okay to lie now. That's the message that's being portrayed. Number three, they do it for followers and political motivation. So we say, why do people lie? Well, that's why the politicians do it, is what our class surmised. Then number five, there is no shame in lying. Now, there used to be shame in lying. You caught someone lying and you know, that was shameful. You caught me. But now, they just move on to the next one. They say there's really no shame now when people lie. Then fourth, many of the followers believe the lies. You know, lying is profitable now in terms of money. You know, you can make money as politicians sometimes if you lie. That's why a lot of them do it. I don't know if I could be a politician. I don't know if I could run for office. because when you tell the truth, I'd get tonight, I'd probably get about 85 votes for telling the truth. But if I went outside these walls, and plus those online, by the way, that's another 150. So I may be up to 300. But to move ahead, it appears you have to stretch the truth. You gaslight, if you tell the truth now, it would be refreshing though if someone told the truth and they won office. Just straight on the truth. I would vote for them. So this is what the young adults said. And lastly here, they said the truth. Let's see. Okay, here it is. They said it's easier to keep up with the truth than a lie. You have a clear conscience when you tell the truth. Then the third thing, the truth can keep you out of trouble, is what the young adults said. And then lastly, they said, mine have to work too hard to keep up with a lie. You have to work at that. These are some bright young adults that we have. Now, I think one of the things, before we close here, one of the things that has happened is that, and it certainly deals with truth. And before we close, we'll talk about this last one. Because sins are often placed on a weight scale, then truth follows that pattern. This is why it's easy for some people to not tell the truth, because they weigh it. You know, we weigh sin, by the way. So in the young adult class, we talked about what are some of the small versus big sins. What do you see as small versus big when they go on this weight scale? And so we numbered some of those, and they gave me a list of what, not necessarily them, but what they have heard and what they think the world may think of as big versus small. Even with the lie, they colored the lie. They're very smart. They said even with the lie, there are lies and then there are lies. There are small lies, which they call the color. Yes. Then they said there's some big lies, the big lie. So what are some of the small versus, so we've got to get out of this idea of weighing sin. Now there are different consequences to sin. That's the difference. Some sins, their consequences are greater. There's no doubt about it. So we really got into discussing the consequences versus the actual sin. Some people have just labeled and put at the top of their sin list certain sins. But that's not how God operates. There are some sins that will take you to hell just as quick as what we consider the bigger sins. We know that. So we got into talking about not weighing sin. If a sin is sin, let's call it what it is. The truth. Someone has to tell it. So as we close out, are you the one that's left to tell the truth? In your circle. You may be the only one. But will you do it? Are you willing to risk losing some friends because you told the truth? And if I ran for office, by the way, and you all voted me in, then I may be a one-term, just one term. Because I really would rather be one term and tell the truth than to be 21 terms telling lies. We'd be better off. So if any politicians are watching this tonight, we urge you to tell the truth. Risk not being elected. You'll be rewarded for telling the truth. Listen to our young adult class. They've told you some of the benefits of telling the truth. Some people just don't want to hear the truth. This is what we closed with in one of our classes. They said it, they just don't want to hear it. That's why they don't tell the truth. They don't want to be around truth tellers. Don't want to hear it. So tonight, the challenge is for us to keep telling the truth. And I believe with all my heart here at Eastside that we'll keep doing that. And the moment we don't is the moment we need to close our doors and move on. Because we're no value. We don't add any value when we stop telling the truth. Appreciate your attention tonight. Appreciate those that are online as we continue to try to get better. You all continue to pray for Brother Brown and his family as they go through his death. Mighty man of God who left an impression here really at the old building. We were there. He came in and did a lot of gospel meetings. So tonight, if you've heard the word and there's something you want to respond to in terms of being baptism, we still baptize on Wednesday night, right? Is that still something we do here? Okay, so yeah, we've confirmed. We still baptize on Wednesday night. So if there's something you've heard and you need to be baptized and respond to it, if you got to hear the word, believe it, repent, confess, and be baptized to be saved. If anyone want to respond to the Savior's message and gospel, you can do that at this point in time. Is there anyone in the audience? And certainly if there's anyone online, you can make your request be known and we will respond to that also. So at this time, what we'll do, we'll kill our feed. I appreciate everyone joining. Then we'll ask if anyone has any prayer requests as we go to end our online feed. Anyone have any prayer requests, you can stand where you are and make your requests known to the church, and we'll pray for you.